I'd like to welcome Greg Buschman to the show. He is a leadership coach, an author, and a professor. And right now, during these uncertain times, well, being a leader is very important. And this is a skill set that you could build on. Greg, welcome to River City Live. It's great to have you. And actually, my first question to start out with is, are you born a leader, or is it something you could actually work on?
Well, everyone's born with a certain set of traits and personalities. And some of those do lend themselves towards being a leader, but great leaders learn how to be a leader. There are strategies and techniques and tactics that you have to use, and each individual person, as well as each individual situation, requires a different combination of those. And you've got to learn how to apply them.
And that makes a lot of sense. And right now, obviously, with uncertain times, it might be at work, or even if you're a parent with your kids, it's really important to harness leadership and to lead by example. And really today we're going to walk through kind of just different, steps, if you will, to work on. And the first one is conflict resolution. Can you talk about that and what exactly it means?
Yeah, conflict resolution is incredibly important. I always liken unresolved conflict to the silent assassin. You never know when it's going to come up and bite you or kill an idea or kill your team. And so having good conflict resolution skills is incredibly important. And it's even amplified in our current situation because stress levels are higher. And now we're meeting over Zoom and doing interviews and team meetings remotely. So it's even more important today.
So how would somebody work on that skill set, if you will?
Well, for instance, there's strategies in creative problem solving that allow different techniques to be used when you're talking to your teammates. First off, Zoom meetings are great because you can actually see them face to face. You can see their body's expression, facial expressions, body language. It's just not tone. And of course, if you're trying to communicate via text and email, you just can't typically communicate emotion. Even emojis don't do a great job. So having a tool like Zoom or WebEx or some of the other ones that have been around for a longer time are absolutely crucial when you're talking about trying to understand if you're truly getting full buy-in from your team, or if someone is maybe feeling uneasy about what you're discussing. Because just like in a face-to-face meeting in your office through a web meeting tool, you can see them live.
What about decision making? That's an important one, especially right now.
Well, the decision-making piece goes along with the creative problem solving. And creative problem solving, if you're familiar with the phrase brainstorming, and you'll see a lot of times you have a meeting and people have sticky notes and they're putting them all over the walls, coming up with a lot of creative ideas. That process is still viable in remote teams. Matter of fact, most of the remote software allows you to do breakout rooms. And so you can break out into smaller groups, and those smaller groups can come up with creative ideas, vet those ideas in the smaller groups. And then when you come back into the larger group, each group is able to present, maybe their top 3 ideas. And then as a group, you boil that down to the even higher top 3 ideas so that your team can then make a decision based on what's called consensus. And if I can borrow you on consensus a little bit, consensus is the most accurate way to make high quality decisions. And consensus is when all of your team members buy into what your team is going to do. They might not like all of the aspects of it, but they're fully committed to the ideas. And if you have unresolved conflict in that decision-making process and you have a dissenter, that dissension can come out later in many different ways. Some people slow a project down. I call them the sloths. Wait in the palms and swoop down and get you. I call those like the hawks or the ospreys. And there's many different ways that unresolved conflict can come back up later in that decision-making process. So all 3 of those, learning creative problem-solving skills in remote teams, making sure that you understand how to resolve conflict and identify it in your team, all of that is going to affect your decision-making ability. And of course, the better decisions you make as a team and as an organization, the better you're going to perform moving forward.
Absolutely. And the way everything's structured right now, the workforce is kind of in separate little silos all over the place because people are working remotely. That's why it's really important to develop the skill set that you talk about with all these traits. The last one I want to talk about is emotional intelligence. Obviously, it's really important when it comes to leadership. Can you describe what exactly is it and how does it work?
Sure. Emotional intelligence is just being smart or understanding how people in general operate. And one of the things as a leader, the most important tool in a leader's toolbox is themselves. And we call this use of self. And leaders are like plutonium. They emit energy, and that energy is either going to charge the team up and help move them forward, or it can destroy the team if it's let out in a negative way. And us as leaders, we need to make sure that we're doing things to keep ourselves our soul, our mind, our body fit, active, so that our own mental abilities and our own emotions stay positive. You know, when we exercise, there are endorphins that are released on our bodies that help keep us positive. Laughter is one of nature's greatest medicines. It also releases wonderful endorphins inside our brains to make us feel good. So we need to do some things that can bust stress and control our own emotions, you know, as the leader ourselves, because our teams, like you said, are going to reflect the leaders and our attitudes as a leader. And so we need to practice what we preach.
Absolutely. Greg, thank you so much for all your time and information. It's extremely relevant, really in every workplace, but even more so right now as we operate remotely. So this is great stuff to pick up on. Now, if people want to learn more about you or your book, where can they go?
They can go to my website. It's www.greg, G-R-E-G, Buschman, Buschman.com. Instead of the Budman, now it's the Bushman. And you know, it's a German spelling. And look for the book is called I Think, You Think, We All Think Differently. And it basically talks about and discusses how each generation views the other and why we view each other the same way, and then provides tools to bridge those gaps. And so for millennials and Gen Z, there's a ton of tips on there on how to get into leadership and what you need to know so that people in my generation, which is Gen X and older and boomers, so that we'll actually let you lead us, and you'll be much more successful if you know the strategies in the book.
I think that's another segment we have to do, really important. It's almost like different languages, if you will, with the different generations. So that's something we will do at a later date. But thank you so much for all your time, your information, and stay safe.
Thanks so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.